Okay, what I covered on Tuesday. So the first few slides will be a review, and then I'll get back into the details of this because you will want to see a little bit of Tuesday to get a better understanding of today. I introduced myself quickly. I'm not going to go back through that for those who were not here Tuesday. This was a little bit about me. I did update. I updated the 20 years to 25, so it shows how long ago it was when I copyrighted this material. But for me, this is the reason why I do this really is a reminder that anything we do as teachers or parents are about relationships. So even as teachers, if I'm teaching a subject, the key for me, I got into teaching because of relationships, not because of the subject matter. I chose math because that was my expertise. Now I teach at the university. I teach in leadership programs and research because that's what I'm good at. But I do it because I love working with people. And that's what education is. No. Hello? Okay, and that's what I really want to focus on in this session here today. I also put up this quote for those who weren't here about the importance of how the adult sets the standard in my home. More so now with COVID going on, I realize that my children will look to me at how I respond to things can set the climate of the house. I can make it a bad mood. I can make it a positive mood. Even if my children are frustrated, I can stay in a positive mood. It stays that way through the positive mood permeates the house. So I encourage you to review this. Again, this is a review from Tuesday, so I'm going to move quickly along to get to the other things. Also, I talked about two things, being the positive role model and coaching. And that's where we finished really on Tuesday, was this idea of coaching, which I'll get into more detail in a second. But remember, the whole purpose of this, of being the adult in growing emotional intelligence of children, young people, of students, it's about the relationships moving beyond the surface level. When I was a young teacher, I did have close relationships with some students who were willing to come to me and talk to me, but a lot of them, I just could say hi in passing. The goal was to get more involved in my students' lives so that I could reach to them deeper than just my content of geometry or math at the time, but move into how I could grow them stronger in terms of emotional intelligence. That was never more so true when I became a principal of alternative high school, which I did for 16 years, for students with social emotional challenges, is the way we put it, who were struggling to manage their emotions and respond appropriately to them. And that's really where this work comes out of. It comes out of work I did when I was, my wife had us go to a webinar, go to a presentation on growing emotionally intelligent children by John Gottman. Reached out to John and said, hey, I'd like to bring this into the education field. And he said it was a great idea. And so I worked on that. So what we're going to look at, this was the idea of being a coach. Now, the reason I chose coach instead of teacher is when I think about this as a football coach, not the one you see yelling at the sidelines and doing all that stuff. I'm talking about the one who, when they see someone make a mistake, they study it, look at it, and try to help that person improve the mistake. And sometimes they do things as a whole group. Sometimes you do it as a whole class. Sometimes we do it as a whole family. At other times, we do it working with individuals. We pull them aside and say, here's how you can grow. Okay. So as an emotion coach, whether you're a parent at home with more than one child, or you're a teacher with a full classroom, there are times you are working with your whole student body, your whole family. There are times you're working individually. Okay. And that's why I look at more as a coach here, that idea. Okay. These were where we finished. This is where we talked about the other day, that expression of intimacy. Okay. Expression of the emotion is an opportunity for intimacy. And when we say intimacy here, it's getting to know someone better, breaking down getting transparent with each other, both ways. I want to be transparent about my life with my students as much as I can be. I want to be open and honest with me. Okay. I want to be able to talk to the student and not be impatient with them, even if they're crying, even if they're angry. Sometimes I let them de-escalate, but the key is, how do we approach children when they're in the response of the emotion. I have to admit, sometimes I get very frustrated with my children if they're acting out in anger, and I have to struggle to be patient. It's not one of the virtues I have, and so I have to work on that. I want to respect the emotion, not the behavior, and that's what we're going to look at here as we move forward with the next few slides. This is the idea that we're separating the emotion from the behavior. The behavior stems out of the emotion, but we want it to be a positive behavior or one that's appropriate. Okay, so what we're saying here is students can still have negative emotions. That's okay. We don't want negative behaviors or problem behaviors. So let's talk about this. Here are the key components I want to remind you of. We want the student to trust the adult. And that's true even as a parent. It seems to me that I wonder sometimes how much my teenage children want to be open with me and trust me. I really want to work on that, whether it's being a parent or as a teacher. I want people to, the people I'm working with, to come to me, trust that I am working in their best interest. I want them to trust their feelings. Okay. The other day I showed a slide about a student and talked about a student who said, "I don't know what's wrong with me. I get angry." Well, I don't want them to feel bad about their emotions. I just want them to think about their behaviors. Okay. And here's the key. You want them to solve their own problems. You don't want to fix it for them, because as they grow, they have to be able to do it on their own. I remember one time, two children of mine were arguing. I have 6 children. And one of my daughters said to me, "You need to go break that up." And I said, "No, they need to learn to resolve their own problems." If it had been physical, I probably would have broken it up. But I mean, they were just arguing with each other about something. Someone had borrowed someone's shirt. Trust me, I had 4 teenage girls at the same time. It was an interesting household dilemma. Okay. But I want them to solve their own problems. I want them to have positive self-esteem is really what I want to say. But I really want them to be able to get along with each other. Okay. And you see this with the questions and other things I have up is because this is often a professional development I will travel around doing, in which actually teachers at tables have discussions and have time to talk and work through things. So if you see that, that's why you see those questions. All right. So what does this mean? Well, this is where we finished. These are the 5 habits of the emotion coach. Okay. And we're going to look at them in detail here, each one. There's no specific order when you're coaching. It's not like, well, I have to start with empathy or I have to start with being aware of my emotions. These are just habits that intermingle with the coach as they work with the child, the teenager, the student, whoever it is. They are trying to help process through the struggles they're having with a particular emotion, and we'll get into more detail about the specific emotions. So the first thing, it really starts here. Be aware of your own emotions, okay? Remember, awareness of your own feelings directly affects how you will tune into the others. If I'm upset, and I'm talking to someone else who's upset, I actually respond probably worse than if I step back and say, okay, I'm not in a good place right now to be talking with them about being upset because I'm upset. I have to think about it.
I had asked you to, so thank you for doing that. And hopefully we'll get good results.
Okay. Somebody's having good results there. Okay. Remember, young people learn by watching. I always tell a story, and it's not really about emotions, but it's how we perceive things as adults here. When I was young, I injured my leg and was in the hospital. This was a long time ago, so they didn't have some of the things they have now. They would fill hot water bottles with boiling water and then wrap your leg and then put the bottles on to keep you, to warm the leg, to heat the leg, because mine had become infected. But they forgot to wrap the leg first and put the water bottles up against my leg. And I ultimately burning my leg. And the nurse, when she unwrapped wrapped the outer wrap and saw my legs burnt, asked me why I didn't yell out in pain. And I told her that I was afraid my dad would think I was a sissy. Now, I don't know. He never said anything directly about that. He never did anything. But I think by watching him and his responses to things I did growing up gave me the feeling that I was not supposed to show pain or hurt or whatever. That's because I had watched, but I learned that by watching. Okay. So I try to be good about that. That's one of those areas I struggle. Remember, we are role models. Okay. So you want to allow the child to see that you have feelings. If you're a teacher, you don't want to necessarily be a zombie to them. You want to express that. Now, that's hard. I'm not saying break down and crying and everything like that. If you're having struggle emotions, but let students know you're real because then they feel better about their emotions too. Oh, if my teacher can be sad, I can be sad. Okay. I said this once about expressing feelings of fear, and someone said, "Well, I was told never to be afraid of my students." That's not the fear I'm talking about. If you're afraid of your students, then you shouldn't be in teaching. Okay. What I mean there is sort of fear, healthy fear. Uh, I was afraid you were going to hurt yourself. That's why I um, told you to stop. Okay. Show them that put emotions to your words so that the students understand their emotions are okay, that it is okay to have emotions. Okay. And this is very important. And I did see this. This, by the way, for those who were not here Tuesday, this does come from some research I did in schools following teachers and studying teachers and the way they reacted. And I found that some teachers showed emotion, hoping that students would meet their emotional needs. Be careful about that. Okay, you're the adult. You want to be the leader in the emotional needs. So being aware of your emotions is so important as you understand working with your students. Right? Then you have to be aware of the young person's emotions. Okay, because here's the first thing you have to realize: emotion manifests itself in many ways. The way I show anger might be different than one of my children. Might be is different than my wife. Okay, so don't assume that someone responding a certain way is they're having the same emotion you might have had in that circumstance. Okay, this is getting to know your students. That's why I say it's all about relationships and understands. So what you have to look for is behaviors. Do you see a change in mood? Is a student crying that normally wouldn't, or won't talk to you, who usually likes to talk to you? Okay, because these are things you're looking for as a lens to the emotions. Why are they feeling that way? Don't be. I'm not upset with the behavior because they won't talk to me. I want to know why they won't talk to me. What is behind that? Okay, and most important, ignoring their feelings doesn't make them go away. They still feel them. Fine, he won't talk to me. I'll just ignore him. That's not going to help the child, okay, or help the person grow to understand that maybe instead of not talking to me, they should come to me and talk to me about what is happening, okay? And we're going to process that as we move along, okay? This here. Okay, so I want to recognize emotion as an opportunity for teaching and building trust, okay? We talked about this briefly the other day about no fixing needed. You want the young person to be able to solve their own problems or learn to solve their own problems. Now, let me clarify that. If you're working with very young people, you're probably going to have to give more direction than if you're working with teenagers. With teenagers, you want them to process it out more. So I do want to clarify that. If you're working with a 5-year-old, you might want to say, well, you might want to consider doing this instead. I would recommend that. But by the time they're in teenage years, you should say, what's a better way you could have done that? Let them process it out. Because you want them to see that you are an ally and you are working together for their future. Now, I want to get to this idea of empathy. Listen with empathy. Because the first thing I want to notice is that I used empathy, not sympathy. And I'm going to talk about that on the next slide a little bit more in detail. Okay? Validation. Okay? When you listen with empathy, you're showing someone that you're accepting their feelings without judgment. Okay? We talked about this the other day, the idea that you don't tell someone how they should feel. Okay? You shouldn't say, well, you should be happy, because we don't know their circumstances. We want to understand their circumstances. So I'm going to validate that their feelings without judging them. Then we're going to process them. Okay? And things you can do to say for this, hey, I hear you. I might have felt the same way with that. Boy, that doesn't sound like fun. There are many ones you can put in whatever your validating statements are, but let the student know or let the child know that you hear them. And let them know that you are there to not judge their emotion, but talk with them about the situation. So let's get to this empathy versus sympathy thing, okay? I'm not saying never be sympathetic. There are times for both. Let me clarify that up front. But let me talk about why empathy is recommended when we're talking about coaching emotions, okay? Because sympathy, hey, it's okay, come here, you'll be okay, okay? Now, that action by saying, hey, you're okay, says what you've done is fine. If you're okay with the behavior they had, then sympathy works. So if someone's crying and you want to say it's okay to cry, then show sympathy, okay? But if someone's yelling out because they're upset and disrupting things and being angry and throwing things, that's not a place to show sympathy, because if you say, oh, it's okay, then they think it's okay to continue yelling out and throwing things. So empathy says, I understand. Let's walk through this. Come here. Let's talk about this. Okay? And that's the key difference. Okay? The problem with using sympathy to teach behavior management is it gives the young person a sense that the way they acted is appropriate. Okay? Empathy doesn't. Here's a true story. Okay? I want to do this one. Even if you're a parent, you can apply it to how you're here as a parent, then you can apply it to your home as well. This has actually happened. A student came running into a classroom in a panic, obviously great upset. The story was driving out of the parking lot. She was on early release. She hit a pole. She jumped out of her car and ran into her favorite teacher's classroom. This is at the alternative school, and was screaming and yelling. And the teacher put her arm around and said, "That's okay. That's okay. That's okay." Okay, that was a sympathetic response. And I was talking with the teacher later, and I said, I wish she hadn't have used that response. And she was upset with me. I said, no, I didn't have a problem with you talking to the young lady and working with her. But by saying it's okay, you told her it's okay for her to come running in and burst out and yell and disrupt. You also told all those students who were in the classroom the same thing. But you should have said, oh, I can see you're upset. Can we step outside? We were in alternative school, so we had someone's in the hallway who could fill in on classrooms so teachers could get out and talk to students. So, and said, oh, I can see you're upset. This is not the place to do this. Let's talk about what's a better way to do it, and stepped outside. Okay. So you can see the pros and cons of such responses. Okay. So that's why I use the phrase empathy. It's the idea that I understand. Let's look at how we can work through this together, but don't reinforce the behavior. If you're okay with the behavior, show sympathy. Hey, it's okay. You're going to be okay. You're fine. Okay. All right. Help the student label the emotion. Okay. Put words to the emotion if they don't understand it. This is particularly true of young children. Okay. You look pretty sad. I can see you're upset. Help them see it. Older students, teenagers, older children, with them, you can often say, you look upset, but is that the situation? Or how you feel right now? Let them figure out and understand that the emotion, and then you're going to get to the behavior. Okay. All right. And make room for mixed emotions. Sometimes students will start fearful and then become angry. All right. By the way, I don't know. I can't see the chat. I want you to think about this. What two emotions do young people most often confuse for each other? This was a study we did, and I looked at that. And a lot of times talking to students, and sometimes it's because they blended together, but they actually said one thing, and as I talked to them, they actually meant another. I don't have access to the chat to see what you're saying, so I will give you the answer, but I'm going to wait a little bit and let you think about it, and maybe you are posting in the chat on what two emotions you think that students most often mixed up. So I'm just going to wait a little bit, and I don't know if Martha can read those and see, but okay. If you're wondering, it is fear and anger we found to be the most. Most often, when they said they were angry and were fighting or something, they were actually fearful. Okay, or sometimes
the answers that we got were anger and disappointment, anger and sadness.
Yeah,
those were the main ones.
And those are very close. They're along the same line, but it's usually anger is actually masking something else. Is what we really found. Is that when students or when young children act out in anger, it's often in response. It's a masking response to another emotion. Okay, so that's why you have to make room for mixed feelings and understand that as you process this, sometimes students may know. You may want to say, well, you sounded sad at first and became angry. Why was that? So they can understand this process and start working through it. Okay. because what's going to happen eventually, what the goal of the students say, boy, I feel real angry right now. I'll give you an example. I had a student who he knew he was angry, but whenever he was angry, he would punch things. Now, he came to our school because when younger, he used to punch faces. Okay, got in a lot of fights. So he came, and this was a voluntary school, but he dropped out, and then we got him back into school. Eventually, he started punching walls. But the problem was he would either break his hand or break something that would cost money. And so what I wanted to talk to, and one day with him, he said, he wanted to talk about how
They already pre-recorded it. You guys know.
he wanted to stop being angry. And I said, well, don't stop being angry. What we want to do is have you respond more appropriately to your anger. So that's really why you want to get to this. He knew he was angry in his case, so I didn't have to do that. So we had to work on the behavior. So let's talk about that, okay? So you want to set limits and help the student problem solve. Now, I say limits. Now, when they're younger, you're going to have greater limits. As they're older, you're going to reduce a lot of those limits. But so help the student problem solve, okay? So you're angry. The student comes into my office. This guy's just punched some walls, okay? His hand, I think this was, we were waiting for the ambulance to come get him from breaking his hand, okay? But he was fine. He was talking. And as we're talking, after labeling the motion, separate. And one of the things was, let's talk about this openly, honestly. But, as we go through, do you think punching walls is the best thing? No. Now, this is an extreme example. You're going to have other examples with younger children you may want to know. Or maybe you do have children who hit other kids when they're young. And you want to say, well, we really don't want to do that. And then explain why. You can't just say, don't do that. But I think the importance is to let them know why it's wrong. And we talked about respect and responsibility the other day, but also, you don't want to hurt someone, and process these, okay? But the key here is the feelings are not the problem, the misbehavior is. And that's what we were talking about with this student. Because when he said, I want to stop being angry, I'm like, you don't necessarily have to stop being angry. You have to stop punching, okay? So we identified goals. So after he got his hand fixed and he came back, we started talking with him. And I said, what do you want to do? He says, well, I don't want to punch. I just don't want to get so angry that I hit this. Okay. So I said, well, what do you think would work? I said, what would be better? Because we talked about this. I'm going to show this. This is actually number 6. Well, I don't know why I have 2 6s and 7s. I should say 6, 7, 8, and 9. So this would be the second number 6 about ramifications of not having a solution. Was if you keep punching, you're going to keep breaking things. Mainly in this case, it broke his hand, so it cost him money. He broke something else that he had to pay for. So it was very damaging, and a lot of students didn't even near. Okay, so we talked about possible solutions. Well, the first one he said, and this is why I want to talk about limits. He said, well, you could have a punching bag in my office. I was the principal. And I said, that sounds like a good idea. Now, I was blessed to have a great counselor working with me, and he was a retired football player, actually. And he actually looked at me and said, that's a dumb idea. And I said, why? And he said, because he's still punching. So we realized I had to step back, too. We had to talk about this. Well, that's right. We can't use that solution because you're still punching. The ramifications of that possible solution is that you're still learning to punch. And if you're out in public where the punching bag isn't available, what are you still going to punch? So we offered some ideas, and we talked about it. He came up with some ideas. He said, well, Dr. Hylen, if I get mad, can I just come in and say, I need to see you, or find a place to sit in your office? And that's where we started. Okay, so we helped them pick the solution that was most suitable and worked in our situation. And he figured out how to start applying that outside of school. And now he's actually a manager of a major company. And he's doing well. Okay, but it took some time. The key was, and this should be number 9, not second 7, don't give in to the temptation to fix it. I could have just said, you know what, you need to stop punching. You need to come here whenever you're mad. You need, whatever. Okay, but by him being able to solve it, when he was outside the school building, he knew the solutions and he could apply it there. Okay. I'm going to move along quickly because I see what time it is. I only have 30 minutes. So again, why is it important for the student to fix the problem? That's the emotional intelligence part. Okay, that's when you know when they can self-solve, when they can work through. And this takes time. But you can still see it in younger children who are 5 and 6 years old. They still probably need more direction and constant growing. But by the time they're older, you start to see that they have solutions. And I've seen it in young kids too. I've seen a 6-year-old say, well, maybe I could have done this. There you go. You've gotten the idea. You're growing emotional intelligence. So that's the gauge of when you know someone is really strong in their emotional intelligence, is when they can stop and reflect and start to problem solve on their own. Because that's what this is all about. Not telling someone that emotions are bad, but telling someone it's okay to feel angry. It's okay to be upset. Okay? However, it's not okay to do bad things as a result. So when they can say, I'm angry, can I have a place to sit down and talk? Or let me talk to someone, or let me process through this, maybe deep breathing exercises, or I'm sad, can I just go be alone for a little while? Okay. Or if you're happy, let me be happy. But just don't go dancing around my classroom and teach, okay? You want to show your happiness, but don't let it be disruptive. Let's find a time to celebrate. Maybe walk into class and say, hey, I just had a great thing happen. Can we take a moment to celebrate? You know, I remember one time a student walking in saying, well, so-and-so's birthday. Dr. Allen, can we just all sing happy birthday? Boom. And we celebrated, and that student was happy, okay? So remember, it's extremely important to be realistic with where the child is, where the teenager is, and with yourself. If there are some things you're uncomfortable with, maybe you step aside and let somebody else deal with that. I know my wife and I have different roles as parents in working with our children and what they will come and talk to us about. I know as a teacher, sometimes students would come to me and say, can I go talk to another teacher? And I was not offended by that. Yes, I'll ask if that teacher can see you now or whatever, because they had developed that relationship. Maybe I didn't have the greatest relationship with every single student. There were some who trusted me, some who, most of mine trusted me. There were some who had a close relationship with me, some who had a close relationship with others. I was okay with that, and I was realistic. I didn't push that with my students. Okay. Well, just to give you a quick outline, I'm putting this up there so it's recording, so you can watch this and pause it if you want to look at. These are some of the books I read as I went through this process. And things I learned. The key there, the one that really got me was The Heart of Parenting, Raising Emotionally Intelligent Children by John Gottman. But these are great books, and this area will be on the recording. I want to thank our sponsors, Cloud9 World. They have great curriculum. If you're a K through 5 teacher, now they have a middle school one. I just earlyhood. This is a great resource for teaching children about individual skills. So love Kiwi. Kiwi learns a lot about emotions. So I encourage you to look into their site. I think they actually have free resources now. And then also, make sure it's moving. I don't know if I'm frozen, but also Deeper Dive Learning. Get on their site and see what they have available, because there it is. Okay. And enjoy theirs. Come back on Tuesday of next week. Got ahead of myself here. Come back Tuesday next week and see the rest of our presentations. Okay. Want to thank you for joining us. Have a blessed day, and I hope you enjoyed or got something out of this that you'll use.
Thank you, Dr. Hylen. We appreciate your time and your energy and all your wisdom. And we will see everybody hopefully on Tuesday at 11 with Helping Kids Survive Thrive in Uncharted Waters with Tara Brown. And then also on Thursday, Adjusting to a New Normal with Janae Bishop, Dr. Janae Bishop. So please join us again. It's the same link. All of the recorded webinars are on our blog, which is in the chat. So just take advantage of that. And we hope you have a great rest of the day.